What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast. And my wonderful SilverSavvy guest today is Laura Lynn Morrissey. Hello, Laura Lynn.
Hello, how are you?
I am sensational. I'm so happy you're here. I love this topic, and it's going to be fun sharing it with you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. I've got a lot to say.
Yay, cool, cool. So I'm just going to read your bio real quick so everyone knows who we're
Sure.
talking with, and we'll jump in the pool. So, everybody, we have Laura Lynn Morrissey. Aging is something we all experience if we're lucky, but too often it's viewed through a lens of decline rather than an opportunity. Today's guest is here to change that narrative. Laura Lynn Morrissey is on a mission to empower people to age well, stay independent, and thrive. With a background in finance, healthcare, fitness, and aging wellness, she understands the critical questions we all face as we grow older. How do we stay strong, mobile, and independent? How do our nutrition needs change as we age? How can we modify our homes to safely age in place, or would assisted or independent living be a great fit? What are the best ways to plan and pay for care if needed? As a certified fitness trainer, nutrition coach, dementia practitioner, and aging specialist, Laura Lynn blends science-backed strategies with real-world experience to provide practical, actionable solutions. Through SilverSavvy, she offers expert guidance, curated resources, and a supportive community for older adults and the families and professionals who support them. Laura Lynn is here today to debunk aging myths, share powerful strategies, and inspire us all to live stronger, smarter, and more independent lives at any age. And that's all really good stuff, my
Yes,
friend.
yes.
I love all of it. And you are like are a plethora of things. You have a
I've been
plethora.
around a few blocks. I've been around a few blocks for sure.
Well, we're going to jump into all those, but first I have to get my one question out because I'm only allowed one question on the Laura Lynn Morrissey show. And of course, it is the what if you could question. I mean, have you ever had a what if you could moment or what if you could thought you'd love to share with the gang?
My whole life, I think I've asked myself that several times throughout my life. But I think, what if you could age well? What if you could understand what it takes to live a full life and to age well? I think a lot of us make a lot of assumptions about certain periods in our life, and we take things as they come. And what I'm trying to do is really, with the experience that I've had over the past 10 years, moving from Wall Street to healthcare, home care, hospice, now to wellness, I really have insight into what does it look like to age well and to live well on your own terms, and what are the things that you can intentionally do to get there. So I want to change the conversation around aging. And the good news is there's so many of us that are going to be hitting 65. And in a very few short years there's going to be more of us than people under 18. So I think that it's a really important conversation to have, because we're going to be flooding the economy, and we're going to be flooding every single system, um, you know, with aging folks. And I'm one of them. I just turned 60, and so a lot of what I'm learning, I'm applying to my own life. So what if I could age well and live fully?
Well, heck, I've flown right past 60. What do you mean 55? We got to move that needle a little bit. I'm way past 60. But it's interesting because there's so many things that you can touch on. Like I said, there's a plethora of them. And then also, you and I are both at the end of the baby boomer kind of cycle. But they're also talking about the people at the top of the cycle, the massive transfer of wealth, right? That's going to come down, like trillions of dollars that are going to go from, these 90 and 80-year-olds that are going to start pouring it down to us and stuff. So you do have those components. You have the financial component, you have the health component, you have to stay active component. Um, but I think healthcare is a huge thing, right? I mean, I've
Oh,
run
it's
into a
huge.
bunch of stuff lately with health.
Well, and I'm sure based on your experience, you've got some stories to tell. It was interesting when I was so I was in Wall Street. I had no, you know, I had no idea what healthcare meant. I'd go to the doctor like everyone else. I'd go to my normal routine, my normal appointments, and then I decided to really stretch my entrepreneur legs, and I bought a couple of home care companies, and I left financial services and my eyes were open wide as to what I was seeing. Number one, so many of us don't realize that the hospital setting has changed. You don't stay in the hospital any longer than you absolutely have to. You are sent home a lot sooner than you ever have. And it doesn't matter what age you are. I think it's more important to understand that as you age, you're not sent automatically to rehab anymore. You're sent home. And what does that mean when you get sent home? It means, do you have someone to care for you? Can you get to the follow-up doctor appointment, the following Monday? Is your refrigerator full with the right nutritious foods? Are you able to get around and bathe yourself and take your meds? Are you going to remember to take your meds? So many things to think about. Who's going to help you do that? Well, guess what? It's family members. So there are, millions of people, 54 million people wake up every day with caregiver responsibilities. That means that if you've got a full-time job or you've got children or some other responsibilities, you now have those caregiving responsibilities, and by the way, it's unpaid. So hospitals are saving all of that money. Medicare is saving all of that money, and it's on the backs now and the shoulders of family caregivers, and really 75% of those are women. Most of the people I dealt with in home care were daughters and daughters-in-law. And I am a daughter. I've been a caregiver since I was 7 years old. So it was amazing to see so many people just like me dealing with a career. And then I was in home care, running
Yeah.
around trying to get home to make sure my mother took her gabapentin. So
It's funny. I did a podcast yesterday on that topic. I'm sorry. I just posted one I did a while back, and a young lady who coaches caregivers. She being forced into the caregiving world, it's like you said, I mean, and I think she said 90% of the people she worked with, maybe 92% of the people she worked with are women. Um, and, when my wife was sick with cancer, I was her caregiver for 2 years. People have no idea, unless
you
they've
know,
walked in those moccasins, how wicked it can be, right? It's gratifying. You want to take care of someone that you love, but oh man, it's tough being a caregiver. Holy cow.
brutal. It's brutal. And I think, especially if there's family dynamics, if there's parental dynamics, mother-daughter dynamics, um, and so there's a lot I mean, we could talk about caregiving for hours. I actually do a talk about caregiving, and I start off by putting an oxygen mask on myself because so many of us are exhausted when we're providing care, and we forget to care for ourselves. We don't eat well, we don't exercise, we're stressed, and we think that there's some level of responsibility that we've got to do it all. And one of the key messages that I leave people is you have to take care of yourself in order for you to do this wonderful thing called caregiving, and you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself. And there's a bunch of other stuff you should be doing as well in order to stay strong. And honestly, I've been in the middle of it, so I talk about it, but I also have to do it myself, because at the end of the day, you're no good to anyone if you're not able to care for yourself.
Well, we're
Um,
gonna we're gonna definitely save that for another episode because you're right. We can go down the rabbit hole on caregiving for like 5 hours because it's
Days,
wicked.
yeah,
We've got
yeah.
so many great things to cover with your Silver Savvy and what you're doing with nutrition and so many of those other things. But one of the things I just wanted to jump on with the what you mentioned. I just spent 7 days in the hospital. Something happened to me that shocked me. But in any case, there is a fear when you get home that you're like, wow, and I have a wife. Sorry. Yeah, she's no caregiver. But there's this fear. when you get home. Not everyone is a caregiver, right? That's not an insult. Not everyone's built to be a caregiver. But when you get home, it's like, gosh, I mean, am I okay? Yeah, then you've got the food issue, then you got the transportation issue, and then you've got, just caring for yourself issue. There's a weird fear when you get home if you are by yourself, right? It's a weird feeling.
I think you feel fallible, you feel fallible, you feel vulnerable. I know, when I was a lot younger, I totally took my health for granted. I I worked in Wall Street. I was very stressed all the time trying to climb that ladder. And I, didn't necessarily take good care of myself. I let stress take a hold. And as you get older, I've learned that health is the most precious thing, and that's all. I'm micro focused on my health now. I'm not obsessive about it, but I'm absolutely careful what I eat and how I live my life, because I feel as though if I don't take care of myself, I don't know who's going to. My husband's amazing, but at the end of the day, I don't want him to have to care for me any earlier than he has to. Um, and at the end, and then and then what do you do if you potentially need care? In fact, I have an aunt who I just found out, we have a little group chat. I know we all of us have, group chats now. And my aunt, I just had one pass away, and I've got another aunt who's in the hospital, and I just asked, I wonder who's caring for her. She's out in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and she's got a full-time caregiver. But for a long time, she didn't. She had nobody, and she would fall and she'd go to the hospital and come home alone. And so, these are things that, SilverSavvy is really my idea was, I've got a lot of, after I got out of home care and hospice, I sold my company. Um, I decided I still had a lot more advocacy in me. I still care very much about educating people on what I saw and that train coming down the track. And if we provide, there are things that I can do on a transactional level. I can help you with your nutrition plan. I can help you with your fitness plan. There's, do people understand that when you age, there's a different level of fitness that you need to have in order to stay independent in your house? And everybody wants to stay in the house. But what I also do is I provide this overarching plan, given that I've got a purview in financial services and I've had this, intense hands-on experience in healthcare. um, I I actually understand the questions you need to ask in order to make sure that your wealth plan is fully optimized. There's lots of costs that occur in our lifetime that we don't necessarily account for in our wealth management plan. And not a lot of wealth managers ask those questions. There's a lot that do, but there's, many that don't. And then on the other side of that, making sure that your estate plan, if you don't have one, you need one, but make sure that all the necessary documentation and whatnot, and how many families go through the stress of having to deal with an estate when someone passes away and doesn't have a will. I know my mother didn't have one, my dad didn't have one. And it was a very stressful time for my brother and I, trying to figure out what either one of them would have wanted. So I provide those services by going deep. I do a deep dive into someone's life, and we figure out a roadmap to make sure that we knit together, do you have enough money? If you are going to live to be, in your 80s and 90s, we want to make sure all of those years are well lived, and really make sure on a periodic basis you go back and revisit it. Because if you put an intentional plan in place, you will have a much better outcome than if you just sort of let it happen, and you'll end up spending a lot. The money that you spend will be more intentional and better spent than the crises that I saw in home care.
Yeah. Well, you brought up so many things. First of all, you're only 60, so you're young. All right. Just to get knocked out about you being older. Um, and I want to dig deep into the silver savvy, but I just have a question about what made you lose your mind and want to do healthcare and open up a
Oh, I know.
facility and
Believe
stuff
me.
like that? Because that's a wicked business, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's no worse than Wall Street. I mean, I could tell you stories, but, it's interesting. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Gary, I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's probably a good thing. I remember the first night I owned a home care company, and the previous owner was so happy to hand me over, being on call. Here's your pager. I'm like, what's this? So I'm on call, and I get that call, and it was one of our clients was suicidal, and I have a lot of experience with that, but I did not have experience dealing with a poor caregiver sitting in a room with no lights on because this person did not, the client did not want any lights on, and the poor caregiver had to spend the night in a 95-degree apartment with the lights off. So that was my first night owning a home care company. I thought to myself, what have I done? But you know what? I look back and I am so happy. I'm the best person to go through something like that. I thought, you know what? If someone's going to do it, bring it. I can handle it. Um, it was very stressful, I will say. When I got out, it
There's
took
so
me a
many
while to
levels
exhale.
to it, right? I mean, you've got the really angry, bitter old person, because a lot of them, when they're not feeling good, are angry and bitter, like my mom.
Yeah,
Sorry, mom.
yeah.
And then you've got family members, who most of them are worthless. And then you've got the Medicaid, Medicare, that you've got the government people you're trying to get paid from. I mean, you've got so many layers of crazy. I don't know how you did it, right? It's a really crazy business.
Well, it's interesting. I think, I kind of came from, and I used to say this when I was in financial services. I used to say, you know what, we all must have come from the same dysfunctional family to be in this business. And now I say, you have to, the people that were in healthcare are so dedicated and so in love with what they do. It is such a duty. They feel such a sense of duty. And unfortunately, the system doesn't, it no longer enables them to do the best thing that they want to do. And that is to seriously take care of and listen to their patients. They can't do it anymore. So the first thing that I thought was I can bring a lot more empathy and compassion and that, ability to navigate. And believe me, I had to navigate a lot of difficult personalities, and I had to deal with, a lot of mistrust of caregivers. But I was also able to build a company that had very little fraud, and there was a whole science to it. What I did was very much based on what I did in financial services in terms of risk management. So I had incredibly trustworthy caregivers. They were the top-notch caregivers. I paid them extremely well at the expense of my margin, because I felt like I don't want to have to worry about you going to a shift because I'm not from this business. I don't want to call in the middle of the night. So you're going to your shift because you're getting paid amazingly well. And honestly, I did honestly target certain types of clients that I wanted to care for, that my caregivers would want to and love to care for. And so it made for a nice ecosystem. Caregivers who are happy tell other caregivers to come work for me. And so at the end of the day, I ended up with this nice ecosystem that became very valuable. And my clients were very, very happy. And that was all I cared about. I wanted those 5-star reviews. That was really important.
Yeah, and these caregivers, man, I've got a number of friends who do it, because I live in where people go to die out here in Palm Springs, California. So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
live
you
in
do.
right? We live besides Florida,
Caregiver
I think
Central. Yeah,
Palm Springs is the next, and it's a tough. But these people, the caregivers become family
they
to
do.
a lot of these people. It's like they just
They're only
depend on
friends.
these people. And one of the things I found is you have to be so careful, because it's all of a sudden like, let me give you my husband's Rolex, and take the TV, and you can have my car, and family members start losing their mind, like, whoa, wait a minute, she's just an employee. And it's like, no, she's not. She's here always for me. I haven't seen you in, months. And so
Ever.
it's a weird dynamic sometimes between the caregiver and the person they're caring for, because become so dependent on them. It's that one person they can count on. It's a really it's it's a beautiful thing when it's right. You know what I mean? It's
It
really,
is.
people are so
It
giving,
is.
right?
And you
It's
have to,
beautiful.
we most of the clients that we had were high net worth clients, and they were very wealthy. So you had to be extremely careful, because these are, some of our clients couldn't see well. They had precious jewelry, they had precious,
Yeah.
belongings. And so it was really critical. I'm dealing with, trust attorneys, and I'm dealing with all sorts of folks that, I'm interfacing with. And so we did have a couple more layers of management to make sure that everything was going well, and then honestly, you have to make sure you're plugged into your caregivers to make sure that you understand if they're in any crisis. Because sometimes a really amazing human might be in crisis, and they might feel compelled to do something they wouldn't normally do. So, it's a balancing act between having that intimate relationship with somebody that you go to dinner with, you eat with, you stay overnight with, you bathe them, and staying professional, so that that level of professionalism. It is very hard, and it's not all the clients understood that, and they did want to hand over the Rolexes. Like,
It could
I
get a little
had I had
dicey.
I had one client. She lived in a very affluent part of Boston, and she was a psychologist, but she was struggling with paranoia in a way that, I mean, she had this gorgeous $1 zillion home, and she was boarding up, hammering. Yeah, she was hammering doors. She thought that people were getting in at night. It was awful, and it was this amazing home. Anyway, one of the caregivers in the morning, she was trying to leave, and this woman, our client, ran up to her with a $200, and she said, "I want you to take this." And she would not let the caregiver leave without taking the cash. So she called. She said, "I've got $200 in my hand. I can't leave without taking it. This woman is getting so upset with me." I said, "Bring it to the office." And I had that money up until the day that I sold the company, and then I mailed it back to her.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that story. And it's like, I mean, what do you do? It's like you got to take the money, you got to
Yeah,
take
you got
the
to take
milk,
the
you got
money.
to take the teapot, you got to, because these people really want you to have it. But so Silver Savvy. So Silver Savvy. So this sounds like literally a completely turnkey, all-inclusive, like nuts to bolts, senior care program company service, whatever. I mean, so is that literally to what it is? I mean, you meet with these people, you take them nuts to bolts to kind of take over their care.
Well, I don't have the home care company anymore, so it's a nationwide company. So my staff and I are able to deal with um, life care planning with anybody. You can, if they're nearby here on the East Coast, then I could go see them in person, or, meet with them on Zoom if they're not nearby. But at the end of the day, we provide life care planning. So the assessment of where are you now, where do you want to be, like, for instance, do you want to live at home? Okay, so let's look at your health plan, let's look at your fitness plan, your nutrition plan, how are you doing with regards to being able to climb up and down stairs? What kind of house do you live in? Is it a colonial like most of the houses on the East Coast? Let's talk about home modifications. So we get into that level of detail, all the way to monitoring your social goals. A lot of us who are older, social isolation is a big, huge deal. And how many of us had all these amazing skills when we were younger? We were able to make friends easily. We were able to do, interview for jobs easily. We knew that we had to learn all of these things. And as we get older, we have to kind of go back to that. We have to reinvent ourselves, and we have to oftentimes make new friends for various reasons, or we have to stay focused on learning new things, because that helps with our overall brain. So I help with developing that life care plan. Now, we also provide support in helping with long-term care insurance claims. So if you're looking to execute long-term care insurance, people think it's Geico. They're just going to 1-800-GEICO. I'm just going to file a claim and get my money, and that is not the case. It is a very detailed process, and double-digit percentage of claims are denied these days for all sorts of reasons. So you want an expert that understands how to navigate that process. And so I work with families to, identify the claim request, fill out the paperwork, follow that process all the way through, attend the RN assessment, attend any follow-up assessments, to make sure that the benefits that you've been paying into for all these years are paid out. We also provide consultative services in identifying and hiring home care, because not all home care companies, as many of us who have dealt with them know, they're not all alike. And I kind of know what questions to ask behind the scenes to really identify what a great home care company is. Because again, it's not just, well, my mom likes this person. And it's more than that. We know this.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we need to protect the client. We also want to make sure that it's a great experience, and that the bottom line is we want to make sure the care is awesome. And assisted living. So assisted living is a very popular living choice folks are making. I want to make sure people are making that choice on a intentional level and not on a crisis level. I mean, so many times when I was in home care, I actually provided services that would evaluate assisted living communities. But oftentimes it was after someone had fallen a billion times, or they were in crisis, or maybe they had memory issues and they were wandering in the road in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I want to get in front of all of that from a life care planning perspective. And if you want to move into an assisted living community, well, guess what? We better get you in line now, because there's going to be more of us wanting to get into assisted living, because there's so many people that are turning 65 and older. But also, let's be more intentional about where we end up, so that we're not spending more money than we need to, that we're in a place we really love, and that, it's part of our overall plan. So I help with that as well.
What what aspect do you throw? I mean, you obviously have a background in fitness, um, and also with the aging aspect of it. Do you still play that role, or you kind of don't really touch that? You're kind of more about the long-term planning aspect of it.
No, I do. So I actually, I am a fitness trainer. So I actually will, if somebody says, I really want to set up, a lot of trainers, they like working with younger folks, because you can basically give anybody in their 20s, 30s, 40s, even early 50s, a workout routine, and you can keep it a little bit more cookie cutter. As you get older, you've got to take into account any limitations or any chronic issues might be happening skeletal wise, or in any other way, and you need to really customize that fitness plan. So I do that. So I have to understand your health profile, and then I will develop a fitness plan that makes sense. So for, say, somebody that's newly diagnosed with osteopenia, well, we know that you need to incorporate heavy resistance training in order to tell your bones to start generating, um, and strengthen your bones. And so I will develop a plan that we will monitor and change as we need to help, achieve stronger bones. And then hopefully the next time you go to get your bone density done, that you've seen, a marked change. Um, or, so many people have issues with their knees, or issues with their hips or their back. So, but we can still, I'm not, someone will say, well, you can do chair yoga. I don't like chair yoga. I think that people need to understand, even in your 80s, you are able to lift weights safely. And that anytime you are doing any kind of physical movement, it helps your body, it helps your mind, even if you have memory issues. So yes, I actually love putting together routines that help people feel better about themselves, and especially if they want to stay in their homes, because you have to have a strong core and strong legs and strong ankles in order to navigate those stairs every day. When I was in home care, it was really, these families had these families had these gorgeous colonials that, they lived in all these years, and yet the minute their health declines, they can't get upstairs anymore. They no longer have access to the full bath. They just have access to the half bath downstairs. And I can't tell you how many times families like, yeah, we just don't want to modify the house, or um, they will end up giving themselves a sponge bath. I want to get in front of that. If we had some sort of a physical plan in place for, say, 5 years or so, you might have been able to get up those stairs. Um, and if not, then let's talk about how to modify your home in advance of having to modify your home.
Right, right. And you can understand, especially back east, if you got a 200-year-old colonial, it's like, man, I don't want to put one of those stair lifty things up there. That's understandable to a point, except it's your mom. You know what I mean? I mean, she needs to get upstairs, right? So I
That's it.
remember, we had I just do this because I love to meet interesting people like you, but my son and I have a real estate company. That's what my real job is. But we had a gal who worked for us forever. She came to work with us when she was 67 and left when she was 84. And what she used
That's awesome.
she was, we love Regina. So, but what she used to do is every day she'd get up and she'd fall down 10 times on the right, and then fall down 10 times on the left, and practice getting up. And I go, well, aren't you worried when you fall down you're going to break something? She goes, not with my fat ass. No way, I'm not worried about breaking anything. But she
Yeah,
goes, I just want to make sure I can get up. So she'd fall on each side. So, you know, uh, weight resistance work is so crucial for the bones. People don't realize that. It doesn't just build your muscles, it builds your bones. And as
right,
we
your bones.
age, we atrophy to the point where we sit around more, we sit around more, we sit around more, and then we wonder why we don't move well. It's because you're sitting too much.
Yeah, the
right?
move it or lose it thing is real, people.
Yeah, I mean, and the truth of the matter is, like they say, you'd rather, wear out than rushed out, right? I mean, and you have to use it or lose it, and so to get these people into some sort of routine early enough, right, so they'll stick with it is a big deal. I mean, that extends everything for them, not just their life, but the quality of their life moving
The
forward.
quality of life. I mean, there's all these studies and statistics. The good news is we're living longer. Unfortunately, are we living better? There's that last 12 years, that 10 to 12 years when potentially if you don't have a strong plan in place to keep yourself strong, all things considered, obviously if something happens, it happens. But if we have our druthers, if we stay strong, we can make all those years. My mother-in-law, she lived in Boston, never owned a car, and she was
Did you say
as,
car?
yeah, I said car. I didn't
You
say
never
car,
owned
I
a
just said car.
for anyone who hasn't been back east, that's a car. That's an actual automobile. Just sorry.
Should get my husband on this podcast. He's got the heaviest Boston accent. When I first started dating him, he's like, "Do you want to go for a bear?" Like, what? You don't know what that is. But she walked all over Boston, and she lived well into her 90s and was in incredible health. But it was just all table stakes. Her diet wasn't necessarily top notch. She was extremely frugal. Most things were from a can, and she pressure cooked everything, no matter what. But at the end of the day, she was extremely strong, and it was really because she walked and she climbed up. Brownstones in Boston have these incredible 18-foot ceilings, which means all of the staircases have to be very steep. And she never had a problem climbing those stairs until the very end. So, you know, big fan of
Yeah,
fitness.
talking to a doctor about the healthcare system and what's going on, and he's like, we are living longer, but we're sicker longer. We're not really
Yes,
living longer. They're just prolonging us, but we're living
yes.
sicker longer. So, we really need to advocate for the diet. It's like my mom's going to be 90, right? And her balanced meal is, a number two at McDonald's, right? So it's a cheeseburger, fries, and a Diet Coke. That's
Yummy.
that's her balanced meal. I'm like, Ma, I don't know how you live so long.
I
Seriously,
know.
Jesus. You're bitter as hell and you eat like crap. All right. How did you make it to 90? Because mental, right? I mean, we know grumpy older people, right? And I told my
Yes,
kids,
we do.
if I ever become a grumpy old person, just turn off my oxygen. I just don't, I don't want to be there. But so you were living longer. One of the things you brought up that made me think about the strategy about when you have that conversation with people, it's like you really can't live at home by yourself anymore. I know you love your home. I know you want to be
Mm.
here. I know you love Betty who comes and visits you all the time. But you can't, you just can't be here. I mean, that's got to be a tough conversation, right?
It's brutal. I was in those meetings so often. I'd meet with the family ahead of time, a lot of tears because they knew they needed to approach their mom or dad with what was happening and that they couldn't stay in the house. Um, and yeah, you try to do it over phases, because a lot of times it has to do with stuff.
Yeah.
I've got this china, I've got the china, I've got the dining room set, I've got the living room set, and I can't take it with me, and so I don't want to leave. I need all my memories are all here, and so really, you know, um, one of the things that we found very helpful in our conversations is to help with the planning as early as possible, help with the conversation so that folks can get their head around what it's going to look like so they can select what things will go with them when they move. Pushing it on them, forcing it on them, it does create just horrible anxiety and ultimately a lousy experience for everybody. And then, bitter feelings from the family or from the kids and the parents' perspective. Um, so, again, even for myself, I mean, I will say I had a couple of houses and a bunch of cars and all sorts of stuff in between, based on my lifestyle from back in the day. And I will tell you, because of what I saw in my healthcare business, I did the big old downsize, and I did it because I don't have kids, so it's not that I have anybody that's going to step in and do this for me. B, I cannot tell you how amazing I felt when I began. And my husband and I had some beautiful things, but you know what? Those beautiful things are now making someone else happy. And I now feel so much lighter. And now for me, it's all about experiences. And I know I'm not unusual. I'm not, I didn't come up with this epiphany. So many of us at this stage of our lives, we want to experience things. I mean, I've spent most of my life either in a conference room or an office. And even, I was out in San Francisco for many years, and I was in some of the most beautiful, cities I was in Hawaii, and I had the best location, and I never saw Hawaii. I was in a conference room. So what? So for me, it's how do you live the very best life? And what are the things that I've learned that I can share that may help someone else live their life as well? And this intentional planning thing it's actually been well received. And and again, life care planning, if somebody hears life care planning, they may, oh, I know what life care planning is. There is life care planning for those that are in crisis.
Mhm.
There are lots of folks that are social workers that will step in crisis and begin to do a life care plan. I'm not talking about that. I'm
Yeah.
talking about a lot earlier, because if we all treat our life care plan the same way we treat our retirement plan or our estate plan or our wedding or our college planning or any of the other events that we see are important enough to have a plan, then we're going to have the outcomes would be a lot more positive and a lot more predictable.
Yeah, yeah, and that, looking at the picture that you're in, you really took this downsizing thing way to the extreme. It's like you have nothing in your house right now. Look at that. There's literally nothing.
I know, I'm completely empty. Yeah.
There's literally nothing
There's
there.
like a zen though, right? The background has like a zen to it. Well, it's funny. We just bought we had a place in Boston and we had a place in New Hampshire, and now we're full time in New Hampshire for now. Um, we bought an apple barn. It was an apple barn. It was an apple barn that a gentleman had converted into a hunting lodge. And then, so yeah, 22 acres, lots and
Oh,
lots of apple trees. And we renovated it and we reimagined it more in line with the way I like to live, kind of California sunny with lots of windows. And so we put in like 50 windows and it overlooks the mountains. It's amazing. And I love to cook. So I've got this
you're
Jagunda
killing me,
kitchen.
kiddo. You're
Yeah, it's
killing me with
awesome.
the 28-acre apple farm.
But it
Come
is empty.
on.
I don't have any furniture yet. I've got a couple of beanbag chairs and my office.
Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. See, that's me written all over it. But it is weird about this
Come on down.
downsizing thing. Yeah, I'm gonna want to come up and visit that apple. Put me to work. I'm a good worker. But it's a weird thing. I mean, when I moved into this home, after my wife got sick, we downsized hard. The kids were gone, and we were in a, what was it, 5 bedroom, 4 bath, 3 car garage, 3,400 square feet guest house. We had a large home, right? Like I was talking about the bookshelf. This thing was 10 sections. Now it's down to 4 sections. And I had no challenge getting rid of anything. I mean, we don't even have a garage now. We have this a 1957 mid-century modern desert home, right? With no
Ah,
garage
so
and
cool.
two
You have like a
bedrooms.
carport?
I love it. Yeah, just a carport. Just I love this house. But the reason I'm saying that is because you couldn't even get rid of books if you wanted to, right? It's the most bizarre thing. I mean, so I had to downsize, you know, all these books that I cherished. And I'm like, it was so insulting when you'd go to try to even give them away. People didn't want them. I was brokenhearted. So there is something about when you have to let go of some cherished things. And it could be the smallest thing to someone, but it's the biggest thing to someone else, right? So that conversation is tough. And then how about, do you deal with dementia at all? And that as people start to kind of slide a little bit, do you guys
Yes.
deal with that at all?
Yeah, I'm actually a certified dementia practitioner, and I was that in home care. Most of our clients had some level of memory loss. And yes, at the time back, we dealt with folks as ill with Lewy body dementia, which can be a very evil type of
Mhm.
dementia, all the way to just, mild dementia. And so we deal with that now. And oftentimes that's where alternative living arrangements come into play where someone's just not safe anymore staying home. They may elope in the night and try to leave their house because they have anxiety or whatever it is. And so a couple things. One is I actually am working with a client who has mild dementia, and I'm working with the son to put a nutrition plan in place and some alternative adaptive tools like different colored plates and different uh, utensils, so it makes it easier to eat with a fork or a knife or a spoon a lot longer. But also to change the color of the plate, which makes, because as dementia progresses, if it progresses, you begin to see food differently, you taste it differently. And so trying to stay interested in healthy food longer is the name of the game. So yes, I do deal with folks that are living with dementia and helping, and then exercise, because exercise, again, for those of us that are healthy, it keeps our minds sharp. But even those who have dementia, any level of exercise can improve the disposition a lot longer, especially if you're dealing with uh, folks at the end of the day, and you've got sundowning. It helps with managing those symptoms as well.
That's what I was going to ask you is if you can try to keep the body healthy while the mind's kind of slipping, a little bit. Because gosh, people can live with dementia for years and years, so you don't want the double whammy of, they're 300 pounds, can't get out of the bed. You've got the diabetes, you've got all these other issues along with the dementia, and you could still be strong and be suffering with maybe some of the early onsets of the dementia. But wanted to
True.
ask you about, I know that you work with, or you had worked, most of your work with maybe a more higher a higher income client, a higher net wealth client. Um, what's available for those of us who are poor, like us poor real estate brokers who don't have any money? I mean, what's happening now with services for,
I have a
like,
lot to say about
use
that.
my mom, for example. My mom has no money, right? She lives out of Social Security, but she has a free and clear home worth a certain amount of dough. And we're like, Ma, sell the home and go live with all your friends at the home. All right. All your friends are there. You're bored. They're all there. Go there. I can't go there. I hate old people and I don't want to leave my house. Okay, whatever. So, are you going to keep eating cat food or do you want me to just keep buying your food? Whatever. But there's a real weird home poor or house rich, home poor, whatever, to, challenge with the elderly, right? They've got this one
That's it.
asset, but they don't have any money, and they don't want to take money because they're from the old school. It's like I'm not taking money out of my house, and I want to leave my kids with something, so I won't take the money. So I'll eat cat food. It's like no, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a real
I
deal.
know there's that dynamic around, pride versus, being practical. So, as far as services go, in my experience, on the East Coast dealing with services, the programs that are meant to help those at risk, for instance, uh, oil, heating oil in the wintertime, it's so there's heating oil programs, there's meal delivery programs, of course, moving from Medicare to Medicaid, understanding the requirements of that in order to qualify. We know that, Medicare doesn't pay for nursing home stays. So, the level and under which somebody needs to fall financially in order to qualify for some of these services, in my opinion, is unfortunate because you need to be less than uh, just less than in order to qualify. And so I found, and I'm actually quite critical of that, you look at how the wealth of this, amazing United States that we live in, and we look at all the money and where it's going, and yet the basic needs of folks who are over 65 are not being taken care of. And so I'm actually participate in activities, legislative activities with AARP, especially around caregiving. Um, but also around, there's some noise right now around Social Security and some buzz as of over the past 48 hours around the Social Security program. So I know we're not meant to go into that, but at the end of the day, I feel as though we could do better. You can apply for caregiving. You can apply for and have a caregiver come into your home. My only concern is that that caregiver, the program only allows so much money to be paid to that caregiver. So you're going to get a caregiver that, quite frankly, may not be the right personality, the right risk profile, and, quite frankly, may not be the right person in your home alone. So, there's a lot of things that we could be doing better to take care of folks that don't have the funds. um, it was interesting when I was in home care, I targeted the clients that I did because I cared about, I came out of financial services very unaware of, unfortunately, how so many other people have to live. And, this is a couple of my life lessons that I'm proud I went through what I went through. It was brutal, but I learned a lot. I did not know how caregivers lived until I saw it, until I had to do payroll, until I saw how many people they were supporting. And I made sure and wanted to make sure that they were paid as best as they possibly could. And we put all sorts of financial literacy programs in place. We had a 401k. We did lots of things that really were unusual for a home care company of our size. We weren't a big conglomerate. Um, and the second thing was that the hospital setting now is relying on professional caregivers, and there's high burnout in that field. And so a lot of these folks are leaving the industry because they can get paid basically the same amount somewhere else, and they don't have to deal with all of the grief and all of the acute care that they have to provide. So
Well,
I know I didn't give you an
do they
answer to any of
still,
that, but
yeah, do they
and I
still
dump in
hold,
problems.
right? No,
Sorry.
it's a big challenge. Do they still hold the equity in your home against you as far as what they'll give you? Like if you got a $500,000 in equity in your home because it's free and clear and you've been there for 60 years, but you're applying for services, so they go, well, you've got all this equity in your home, so we're not going to give you services. Do they still hold that against you?
I haven't seen that. I mean, that might be true, but I haven't seen that. The uh, the home, what I saw was, so, you know, reverse mortgages was one way that we worked with clients to obtain a reverse mortgage. And obviously, 10 years ago, that was not the right solution, but the industry has been cleaned up and there's a lot more oversight around reverse mortgages. So that was definitely one vehicle that we used to help pay for care. If your, dad was, or your mom was a vet, that was another way to, get access to services. But the home was protected, and I haven't seen any issues with regards to, the house was basically exempt from. It was about how much cash you had in the bank, and that you had to have less than, was it like $2,000 at the time, I think, less than $2,000 to be to be able to,
Not a lot of dough. I'm a huge
right?
advocate of the reverse mortgage. Like when I meet with a client, and you meet with the family, I'm like, hey, mom's got a
Yeah,
smaller
the
house.
business you're in.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like, well, guys, mom, do you want to stay here? Are you able to stay? I don't want to get too much in people's business, but ask the kids, hey guys, if you don't need the dough, if you're not selling and their mom's gonna give you a bunch of dough to help you guys out, that's none of my business. But if you guys are okay and mom wants to stay, then I always say, don't sell the house. Get a reverse mortgage. It's if you can wrap people's head around it that it's not a bad thing. They were horrible, but they're
They
completely
were.
different now. But also it's just that old school thinking of, oh, I don't want to encumber my home. I want to leave this all to my kids and yada yada. But it could be a lifesaver
It is,
for
yeah.
people, the reverse mortgage. I recommend them all the time, especially now that
Yep.
they're actually not corrupt and
Yeah, exactly. I know. It took a while. It takes, you have to kind of educate. Yeah, there's still that little bit of a cloud hanging over, but it's worked out on several occasions. And and I think, at the end of the day, again, I think the services that we have, and it's going to be interesting as, more and more and more of us age, these programs that are deficient, they're going to have to be addressed
yeah,
because, unfortunately, in the United States, and this is my little financial services hat, most Americans have less than $10,000 in the bank. So, actually, it's even less than that, but let's say it's $10,000 in the bank. And so these programs are going to have to be revisited because otherwise we're going to completely find ourselves in dire straits.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mean, the writing's on the wall. I mean, it's not a secret. I mean, it's openly talked about, just no one ever seems to do anything about it like most other stuff. Um,
Yeah.
Back to the staying in home thing. Um,
Hmm.
I would imagine if you do qualify for services and you are able to get some help at home, and I know what you're talking about with helping get better caregivers and paying them more, because when we were going through this with my mom, it was like you could literally make more money working at McDonald's than you could as
Absolutely.
a caregiver because the state only allocated like $14.50. You can go to McDonald's and make 18 bucks. And
Exactly.
all the work that you have to do for $14.50, and you couldn't try to pay them more. You couldn't go, I'll tell you, I'll pay you another 10 bucks under the table, right? Because we love you and we want you to stay here, because you're risking too much. You're breaking the law, right? So it's such a tragic thing what they're doing, because if you could keep the person in the home, it saves everybody money, saves them money,
Exactly.
saves the state money, saves everybody money, as long as they're capable of being at home. So, I give you great kudos for paying people not only a living wage, but above a living wage, because it's
Absolutely.
so desperately needed. But so if we could keep people in their homes longer, just get them some services, you would think that's a win for everybody, right?
Absolutely. And that's the argument. The argument is having someone live in their home as long as possible and have the necessary care. It's a huge, and there's lots of studies now coming out that, as an advocate, we can leverage, but we've got to have more and more people standing behind legislation in order to make changes. Because a lot of these programs have been around a long time and nobody's really looked at them. We do make a lot of investments in our younger generation, and that's important, of course. But we really need to start making investments in these programs that really are just efficient. And care at home is one of them. And to your point, how many folks that there's a number of reasons why people end up in the hospital, and hospitals know this. So I can't tell you how many Fridays I would get calls saying, this person's coming home, we're not going to discharge them until they have 7 by 24 hour care for 5 days, because they knew from a hospital readmission standpoint that they needed to get past that Monday check-in with the doctor, whether it's telehealth or physical, and so they knew that they'd be, free and clear if they had a caregiver in for the weekend to get them to their appointment, drive them to the appointment. So, but there's some goodness in that, manipulative situation, because at the end of the day, it's true that quality of that person's life was better because they were able to get past that initial checkpoint and go to the doctor, and then from there have a care plan, and get physical therapy and whatnot coming in the house. Um, you and I know this, but there's so many people that don't. You've experienced it, so and I'm like, we've got to talk about this at a much grander scale.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you cover so much. I mean, you talk about, finances meets aging well. You have talking about shifting the narrative on aging, health and longevity strategies, navigating long-term care insurance, paying for home care, curated aging-friendly products, which you have a lot of on your website, which is awesome. The mental aspect of it. I mean, you cover so many things. I mean, you're deep into this, and I just love that we had this conversation. But so where do you see? It's going to hit the wall, right? I mean, it's absolutely going to hit the wall. There's no denying that there's a crisis here, because so many of us are aging. Um, so what do you see happening here? What do you see with, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you see, because you're so in it, coming up in the next 5, 6, 7 years when we hit
Well,
the
it's interesting. It's interesting. I'm doing a talk about this, and I didn't want to do the talk. Initially, my talk was all doom and gloom because the numbers are not they're not compelling. The numbers are not positive. So there's a lot of headwinds. Where if you think back when I was in financial services, when I was on Wall Street, Y2K was a big thing. We've got to, Y2K, $50 billion spent globally, and then Y2K, we all got T-shirts, just another day. Y2K, just another day. we're not doing that for aging. What the floof? So the what do I see happening? I do see that we don't have a plan. And so I say, what can we control? Uh, look at ourselves. What can we control? So we need to be at a global scale more aware of what our government is doing to help us age better. That said, that's a big, huge nut to crack. What can we do for ourselves? So we need to be intentional in our aging. We need to understand what all the elements of aging well look like. We need to be more intentional with our plan. We need to be very aware of our fitness and nutrition. It is not, people throw that word around, but it is real and it makes sense. Um, and I would add social connection. And at the end of the day, aging well is more than just about money. It's about intentional planning. So that is where I think we can control our own destiny. And then broader outside the concentric circle is, I am a big advocate in participating in legislative changes. So I kind of joined AARP because they're nice and big and they've got a big, huge voice. And I'm aligned with some of the things that they're doing, I believe in some of the things I don't, but some of the things I do. So I am down there at the State House and I am an advocate in making a change. And we have to, because if we don't, we are going to face some real crisis of care. First of all, um, difficulty in getting appointments, difficulty in getting specialists because we have a primary care physician's crisis going on. I mean, I could go on. In fact, I think I will. You got
No,
another
I'm
hour?
glad. I'm glad that no, I'm glad because this is so important.
Got
Like
another 60 minutes?
I was talking to, yeah, I've got all day. I've talked to someone the other day, except my son is my boss, so he'll probably be calling me like, "Where are you?" I was
Where
talking
are
to
you?
someone the other day, and they brought up a really great point. Because I've always been a health fanatic my whole life because my
Oh,
dad
that's
had
awesome.
a heart attack at 62, right? So I made it my mission to never have a heart attack my whole life. So I've just been adamant about my heart, my health, and fitness. And 3 weeks ago, I had what might have been considered a heart attack, and now I've got the stent and a pacemaker and all this stuff. I haven't said that on TV yet, but I am now. Anyways, so I mean, even someone who's super healthy, something can come out and kick you in the nuts,
It
right?
can
And it's
happen. It can
easy.
happen.
It can happen. But I was talking to this one guy, and he said, people don't look at they look at the macro, right? We're kicking the can down the road. Every new administration kicks the can down the road. Everyone says they're going
Yes.
to do something. They don't do anything. Nothing ever gets done. But he goes way below that. You have to look at what's happened to the healthcare system.
Oh,
Doctors are leaving. You don't see your doctor, you see a PA. Doctors don't get paid anymore. Insurance is a complete disaster. And he says it takes a minimum of 30 years to grow a doctor. He goes, because they have to be born, and they have to go to school, then they have to go to medical school, then they have to go to residency. So by the time you've got someone who's able to be a doctor, it takes 30 years. And we're so behind the curve on growing doctors, right? And he goes, people aren't even looking at that crisis yet of the fact that not only is the healthcare system a disaster, there's no money in the healthcare system, but we don't have any doctors. And it's
yeah, there was this moratorium in the 90s that basically we have too many doctors coming into the field and we need to slow doctors coming out of colleges. And so they had a moratorium. And then nobody said, wait a minute, let's just kind of marry what's happening with the baby boomers and the level of primary. And by the way, primary care physicians, those poor souls don't get paid enough. So what are
no.
we all doing? We're going into becoming a specialist. And so that's really where, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I mean, you're spending hundreds of thousands of, it's not that I blame them, but at the end of the day, and now you got venture capital money going into the hospital systems. I worked for a venture capital firm. Oh, it's all, show me the money. I mean, that's all it is. It's margin,
Yep.
margin, 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 all day long,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and I,
and so when you are these doctors, and I love them, and unfortunately I've dealt with a lot of them in the last couple of years. Yeah, cancer. So I'm dealing with oncologists and surgeons and radiologists and all this stuff. I'm going, geez, I mean, how many doctors do I have, right? And then now with this issue, now I got cardiologists and physical therapists. I've got all this other stuff. I'm like, holy cow, you guys! But when I was in the hospital, I was there for 5 days. I think I was there for 5 days. God, these
wow,
people gave such great care, and they
they
cared
do,
so
they
much. I
care,
think I
they
saw
do.
my doctor twice in 5 days. But the nurses and the the PAs just doing such great work, but it's at some point we're going to hit a wall where we just don't have enough people to care for the people who need it.
I agree. I agree. And yeah, and there's no solution right now. I think now the information is kind of getting out there in the mainstream because we're not getting our appointments and we're not able to see our primary care for, having a physical once a year. You can't even get to have a physical. I know last year my physical got rescheduled 4 times. I'm not even sick. Like it's a 5-minute appointment, people. I'm easy. Um,
But that's
but
but that's
anyway,
why your focus on health is so important because no one focuses on health, right? We just do not pay attention that our food is garbage, our air is garbage, our water is garbage. We eat like
yes,
crap. You get the lucky ones like my mom who lives to 90 eating a number two, with cheeseburger fries and a Diet Coke. But most people aren't lucky like that. She's just got those genes, right? But most
yeah,
people get very sick. You've got 40-year-olds with what we used to call age onset diabetes. Now we call type 2 diabetes because they're getting it so young they can't call it age onset diabetes, right? And you've
true.
got these sicknesses that are happening to people younger and younger and younger. So what does that tell us about what's going to happen in the future? It's going to be a freaking train wreck disaster.
Yeah, it's almost like a generational thing. We're going to have to really learn that our food is not healthy and then have this turnaround and rejection of the food. And, there's been this long-term talk about, moving from, you know, uh, the type of healthcare now, was it fee-based to value, or value to fee-based to value? But anyway, basically more about, encourage people to take better care of themselves, and that way you avoid care altogether. And until we move towards that type of a healthcare system, we're going to continue to see. I lived in New York for a little while, and I remember, Bloomberg at the time he was limiting how large the slushies could be, and everybody was up in arms around, the fact, this kind of a nanny state, and I thought, yeah, maybe, but at the end of the day, we just don't know what we're doing to ourselves. And so to have somebody stop with the mega Coke, it really, because
I remember that, and I'm a
remember
very,
that?
very big libertarian. So I'm like, you can't tell me what to do. But
Well,
but
exactly.
but on the other hand of this, the other side of that though is I don't think if you're getting an EBT card or a SNAP card or you're getting this welfare cards that you should be able to go into 7-Eleven and buy a 2-liter Coke and a bag of fries. I mean, a bag of potato chips with your EBT card, right? That card should go to food,
Nutritious food.
right? It should go towards food. That's why you're getting it. It's supplemental nutrition thing, whatever they call a SNAP card. And the other thing that I discovered with my mom, because we fought to get her a little card. I'm like, Ma, you've paid 70 years. You've paid into the system for 70 years of your life, right? You're gonna suck whatever you can out of this. I know you have pride. So we got her a little card. She gets like $180 a month on this card to go buy food, right? I couldn't believe the stuff you could buy on the card and you couldn't buy on the card.
Yep.
Like
It's
she
weird.
cannot buy a rotisserie chicken on that card. There's certain vegetables she cannot buy on that card, but she can buy all the junk. I was shocked at that. I'm like, no, no,
Yeah, it's upside down.
it's completely upside down. So, there's so much money there. It's not a money issue. There's tons, there's
No.
trillions of dollars. We give away money like drunken sailors, right?
Well, that's it.
But no
Exactly.
one's focusing the money and how it needs to be spent.
I would agree. And I think that, until, you know, if you think, like, I remember when I was first learning about the healthcare system and about hospice, and I needed products. I can't tell you how many folks would be in an assisted living community and they would run out of adult briefs. And so we would, part of our service, we would run and buy them, because the daughter-in-law couldn't get there till Monday. And there was nowhere to be found. You couldn't find products for folks that were aging anywhere. And it was so difficult. And, some of the things we had to do to address that issue was difficult. And there was a lack of dignity at times. Now you can go into a Walmart, you can go anywhere now, and there's all these products. So the reason why I say this is because there's more of us out there who are aging, things are moving. but are they moving fast enough? And are they going to address this incredible surge that's going to come at us, on all every which way but loose? And that's really, I think that's really where our dilemma is, because at the end of the day, a program like SNAP should be more better managed so that we have access to the very best food, and maybe the rotisserie chicken, although it does have a lot of sodium, just so you know, it does have a lot of sodium at the end of the day, but it has a lot of protein. And I can't tell you how many rotisserie chickens keep a gentleman who might be in his 90s from eating a dozen candy bars, uh, because he likes rotisserie chicken and he doesn't have to cook it,
Yeah.
just as long as he doesn't have
And
high
you,
blood pressure.
you just don't eat the skin, like I tell my dad forever. Stop eating the skin. You got to eat the other
Stop
part
eating the
too every
skin.
once in a while, right?
Exactly.
But anyways, but you're getting involved. You're fighting for legislation. You're doing the work. You're doing all the good things. And I'm so grateful that you joined me and we're getting the word out here. And I think more
Thank
people
you.
have to get their head out of the sand and understand. And it's like, oh, mom will be fine. She's been around forever. She'll be okay. I fall into that trap all the time. She only lives a couple miles down the road. My son lives 2 blocks down the road, so we're here. We
Oh,
could
that's
we
awesome. You guys are
certainly do
together.
more, right? But still, there's still limitations to what we can do. And it'd be nice to not have to constantly fight the system to kind of, like I said, she's 90. She's literally paid in the system for 70 years, and
What
to
did
get
she do?
her mind
What was her
around,
career?
yeah, what?
What was her career?
We owned, or they owned drugstores
The
earlier. So
drugstore. Okay.
she was in retail for a long time, and then she was a hostess um, at a restaurant for 40 years until she
Oh,
was
so she must have.
86, and COVID shut it down, or 84 maybe when COVID shut it down. So COVID shut it down, and she lost her job. So she lost her purpose. And I think that's it. One of the things we didn't really chat
That's
about, but
huge.
that's one of the things that's so important is giving these people a purpose, right? And I
Yes.
and I met just the most wonderful person. We did a podcast. I can't I got to give her props for her thing, but she has what's called the Mentor Project. And what she's doing is she's going to all these seniors who are sitting
Oh,
withering away inside the
oh,
homes, and she's going to them, talk to them. What did you used to do? What was your specialty?
oh,
And she literally has astronauts, Nobel Prize winners, physicists that are just withering away in these homes
oh,
that now are mentoring kids. I get goosebumps thinking about it. I mean, so they're
oh,
literally the change in these people,
huge.
they
Oh,
come
huge.
alive. They've got purpose again. And I think one of the biggest things about aging that I've seen with my mom and some of my older clients is once that purpose goes away, wow, they just drop hard.
It's part of the spiritual wellness. It was interesting. I was Jack LaLanne's wife. She's on a bunch of
Isn't
podcasts.
she
She's
like
awesome.
Elaine Lane or something like
Yeah, Elaine Lane. And
that?
she said three things. Of course, I have 7 techniques of aging well, and one of them is spiritual wellness. But she said, and she brought it down right to the essence. She's like, someone to love, something to look forward to, and something to do. So you have to have, something to look, and I'm like, that's it. I don't have to, I shouldn't even talk about any of the other things because that's really all it comes down to, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, you kind of stole my thunder on that because you've been so
Oh,
gracious with your time. We got to get out of here. But I lied to you earlier because I am a liar. I lied. I confess.
I heard
I
that
said
about
I
you.
had just one question, but I always have two questions. I give you the what if
No.
you could question. I know. I know. I give you the what if you could question, but I don't give you the second question. My second question that I like to finish with is there something you'd like to share with our guests? It could be a saying, it could be a thought, it could be whatever's meaningful at the heart, for Laura Lynn. What would you like to leave us with as a thought? That Lelaine one was awesome, but you can't use that one now because it's already gone. So
Oh.
what would you like to leave us with that means something to you that you would like to share with us?
Well, it's interesting. If before I was, when I was in my old world in financial services, I would have said the best revenge is living well. And that was something I used to say all the time, and that enabled me to kind of move through some of the shenanigans that I had to deal with. But now it's really, I think it's trust that you are always becoming. I think at no throughout your life, you have to recognize that if you no matter where you are in your life, you are still evolving, and that you need to lean into that, because as you age, there's more opportunity and there's more potential, that you just need to believe in yourself and that trust that you are always becoming. And I think even for myself, this is my third career. I'm 60 years old and I'm going at it as hard as I did when I was first out of college and had a zillion student loans. So trust that you are always becoming, no matter where you are in your life.
I love that. And it's so true. And it ties in kind of where we were a moment ago, that you have to have a purpose, never stop having a purpose and moving forward. We've all seen it. A CEO, brilliant guy, kicking butt for 40 years, retires at 65 to golf the rest of his life and dies at 66. He's like, got,
That's
you,
real.
you
Yeah,
have
that's
to
real.
have the purpose of doing something. And I'll pull up Elaine's saying, because I love that, because it's so true. You have to have someone to love, you have to have a purpose, you have to have something to reach for. And well, I mean, why else are we here? I mean, we're
That's
here.
it. I believe that. I believe that now. I
Yeah.
thought it was just for shoes, but that's not the case anymore. I know now.
Yeah. Well,
Thank
everybody,
you.
I'll tell you what, we have just experienced such an awesome young lady. We have Laura Lynn Morrissey, and as you can tell, she has SilverSavvy, age well. And whether it's about how to stay strong, mobile, and independent, how to do our nurturing needs and change as we age, how can we modify our homes, the best ways to plan for the future, and so on and so forth. It's just a plethora. I've used that twice so far today. A plethora of services that you offer with Silver Savvy. So where can people find you? How can we get connected with Silver Savvy and look into all your services and such?
Reach out to me at hello@silversavvy.com, Laura Lynn Morrissey, or www.silversavvy.com.
Awesome. And are you on LinkedIn, Facebook, and
I
all of that?
am on LinkedIn, Laura Lynn Morrissey. I'm on Facebook, which is Silver Savvy Age Well. And I am on Insta. I'm on YouTube. I'm everywhere,
You're on
Gary,
the Insta?
everywhere.
I'm on the
I'm on
Insta.
Insta.
You're on the Insta. I love that. Well, Laura Lynn, you've been amazing. I'm just so grateful for your time. This is
Thank
such
you, Gary.
a huge topic. We literally could have gone on for 5 hours. There's so much there. Being a senior now myself with an AARP card, um, having a 90-year-old mom, dealing with so many of our clients are, in their 70s and just trying to figure out what to do with their home. There's just so much there. And I'm grateful
Well,
that
I'm happy
all
come.
of us.
I'd be happy to come back and talk more about that. Just let me know.
Oh, I'd love it. And also the caregiving, because honestly, I don't think we can cover that enough because it's a massive topic. I mean, we've experienced it with my mom for the last year, having a caregiver. It just changed her life. And this poor caregiver, like I said, I mean, she gets 14, 15 hours. She could make more stinking at McDonald's. There's just got to be something we can do. You did it, right? But not everyone's willing to take that hit on the bottom line
That's
like
right.
you were, right? And so
That's
when
right.
BlackRock owns everything on the planet, they're not going to do it. They could care
That's
less.
it.
So, so yeah, if you would come back, I'd love to have you back because we
Oh,
have
I love it. I would love it.
we'd do it
Yes.
again. So, all right, everybody, thank you so much for listening in. Again, we had our wonderful guest, Laura Lynn Morrissey with Silver Savvy. And we'll make sure all of your connections are at the bottom of the podcast so we can all reach you because we all need to. All
Yay.
right, my
Thank
friend.
you. All
Thank you so
right.
much. See you guys. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.